My wife was always so distant with me. I had always thought we were nothing more than the most intimate of strangers. But I never expected she had a completely different side to her in private. She was secretly a writer on a popular romance site, and she was writing a story using characters with our names. Now, as I looked at her, words caught in my throat, and the food in my mouth became impossible to swallow. My husband is looking at me, and he's actually blushing. Rose's lips didn't move, yet the voice drifted right into my ears. Maybe tonight, I'll write a little something about my husband and me on the dining room table. Help me. She had no idea that I had just developed the ability to read minds. When Rose and I got married, everyone in our circle knew it was just a merger to secure the future of our family businesses. I had already prepared myself for a marriage where we would barely see each other a few times a year. But Rose made a point of coming home on time every day to make dinner from scratch. She would let me know if she was working late. As a wife, she kept up appearances perfectly. I had gently reminded her before that she didn't need to put on a show for everyone. It's not like that, Rose said, looking up at me with a serious expression. A marriage requires respect and effort. This isn't an act for other people. It's what I believe I should do as a wife. I was a little taken aback and didn't say anything else. From that day on, I stopped avoiding this place I was supposed to call home. I even started to feel a little bit of warmth here. Tonight was no different. With only a single warm lamp illuminating the living room, Rose was lounging on the carpet in a silk slip. The nightgown was already short, but she lay on her side completely unguarded, her perfect figure on full display as her fingers flew across the keyboard. She looked nothing like the impeccably dressed, all-business EO she was during the day. Oof! One look at my husband, and my inspiration is overflowing. What did you say? I froze, my hand still on my shirt, and turned stiffly toward Rose. I could have sworn I heard her speak, but her lips hadn't moved. Is something wrong? Rose shot me a quizzical look, then closed her laptop and stood up. I made those Coca-Cola chicken wings you like, she said, her face a perfect mask of indifference. But don't eat too many of them tonight. Her tone was as formal as ever. I just nodded stiffly, but the voice in my head refused to fade. Hubby, tell me I did a good job. Asterisk, do you love the chicken wings more? Or do you love me more? Oh God, what a terrible question. Honey, don't you dare answer that. Asterisk, I glanced back at Rose. Her expression was still completely blank. I was speechless. I could now say with absolute certainty that I could read minds. Specifically, I could hear Rose's thoughts. This was going to be a very loud dinner. It turned out that, deep down, Rose was an incurable chatterbox. But when I tried to reconcile this inner voice with the stunningly beautiful, famously serious woman who always topped New York's most beautiful lists, it created a bizarre disconnect. When a business deal went south, did she secretly curse them out in her head while maintaining that perfect poker face? The contrast was, I had to admit, kind of adorable. The thought made me chuckle out loud. Asterisk, wow, my husband is so handsome when he smiles. I want to kiss him. Asterisk, I choked, a breath catching in my throat. I stared in disbelief as Rose calmly pushed a glass of water toward me. I quickly gulped down some water, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. A slow heat crept up my face. No way. I had to be hearing things. The Rose Thompson, the goddess pursued by countless heirs in New York's high society, would never think something like that. Asterisk, did my husband see me blush? Asterisk, probably not, but still, I should write a bonus chapter tonight. Picture this. Above the table, it's all business and clinking glasses. But under the table, I'm teasing him, and he has to keep a straight face while negotiating with all those suits. Asterisk, what in the world? Asterisk, see, just being with my husband gives me a burst of inspiration. Let's keep this going. Asterisk, I wanted to clam my hands over my ears. My mouth went dry, making it impossible to swallow another bite. Yet, Rose acted completely normal, as if the person with that wild imagination wasn't her at all. She kept eating, and her inner monologue kept rolling. I had to find an excuse to get out of there fast. If I stayed any longer, my entire perception of Rose as this cool, untouchable goddess would be shattered forever. Rose spoke up. You've barely eaten anything. Is something on your mind? I looked at her, the words dying on my lips. Well, did this count as something being on my mind? I mumbled a vague, guilty excuse. Asterisk, excellent. My husband is being evasive. My readers are in for a treat tonight. I'm going to write it all out in glorious detail. Asterisk, I didn't dare to contemplate what glorious detail might entail. I shut my bedroom door, and the world was suddenly silent. But my heart was still pounding in my chest. Just like last time, please don't mention that I started my own law firm. I reminded Rose again before we got out of the car. She retrieved the gifts from the trunk, linked her arm in mine, and nodded obediently. I know, Mr. Big Shot. But inside her head, she was already whining. Asterisk sob. I should have held out for a reward. I should have demanded a kiss as payment. Asterisk, I kept my expression neutral as I put my arm around her slim waist, feeling the smooth, soft texture of her skin through her dress. Over the past few days, I'd more or less gotten used to Rose's unpredictable inner world. Rose, darling, you're here. You didn't have to bring all these gifts. A lavishly dressed woman said, beaming at Rose with a smile that crinkled her entire face. Yes, our dear daughter-in-law. Come in, come in, a man in a suit added, fawning over her as he took the bags from her hands. I was pushed to the side. These were my parents, my own flesh and blood, the vampires. Rose was the undisputed queen of New York's high society, and having her as a daughter-in-law gave them endless bragging rights. I couldn't help but feel it was deeply unfair to her. Having parents like mine must have been a huge burden for her. It would be a lie to say I felt nothing, and a bigger lie to say I wasn't disappointed in them. Make picked all of these out for you himself. A long, slender hand reached over, took my arm firmly, and pulled me to the front. The soft pressure on my arm sent a pleasant tingle through me. She really was completely unguarded around me. I glanced up at her, surprised that she seemed to understand my subtle moods better than my own parents ever had. Mom, Dad, Meg spent a long time choosing them, Rose said, her fingers lacing through mine as she leaned against my arm. Oh, really? Ha, is that right? Well, let's hurry inside for dinner. I dropped my gaze and murmured a quiet acknowledgement. Rose was right. I'd spent a long time picking out those gifts. There was a time when I would have craved a word of praise from my parents, but I was past that now. They didn't deserve it. It wasn't worth my energy. Rose, Mick isn't causing you any trouble at home, is he? Look at him, always walking around with that long face. My parents had already piled Rose's plate high with food. I knew she had a habit of avoiding carbs at night, and that much food would make her feel sick, but she politely accepted it all with a smile, never refusing. Mick is wonderful at home. He's never any trouble at all, Rose replied smoothly, fielding every one of their comments with grace. She played the part of the perfect wife, showing none of the distant authority she commanded as a CEO. Mick, are you daydreaming? Did you already forget what I just told you? I snapped out of my thoughts, recalling what my so-called mother had just said to me. Rose's phone rang, and she excused herself from the table. What is wrong with you? My mother hissed, her voice sharp and loud. The warm, friendly facade she'd shown Rose had vanished completely. Can you not cause me problems for once? Mick, you know how important this project is, my father began with a soft sigh. Don't be difficult. You need to convince Rose to give that project to us. My gaze turned to ice. I will not interfere with Rose's decisions, I said, my face a mask. She was my wife, not their pawn. My mother shot me a venomous glare. Then you find a way to interfere? You're going to make this happen for us, one way or another. Before I could refuse, my mother shoved a piece of shrimp into my mouth. You'd better think very carefully about what you should and should not say, she warned, her voice low and menacing. They wanted to press the issue further, but my vision was already starting to blur. Mate, the next thing I knew, I was waking up to the sound of Rose arguing with my parents. Mrs. Evans, didn't you know that Make is allergic to shellfish? Rose's voice was dangerously low. Of course we know. We must have eaten it by accident, my mother explained, her voice tight with anxiety. How could we not know something like that about our own son? A bitter, sarcastic smile touched my lips. In that moment, I lost all hope for my parents. I had to stay in hospital for 2 weeks of observation, and during that time, Rose moved her entire office into my room. I felt like I was getting sicker by the minute. Looking at my husband, all beautifully broken like this, I could write 10,000 words a day. Asterisk the hospital room bonus chapter will be perfect, hee hee. My husband, so fragile and vulnerable in his sickbed, is just irresistible. Asterisk I stare at my laptop screen, but my mind was a million miles away. I had heard Rose's inner voice say things like this more than once. Writing? Inspiration? Bonus chapters? Readers? Could it be that Rose had a secret hobby? Following the clues from her rich inner monologue, I actually managed to find her online alias on this romance writing site. She was a huge deal, a famous author. This couldn't be right. She was Rose Thompson, the famously aloof goddess of New York society. How could she be a star romance writer? It was completely absurd, but the world is a strange place, and after a few minutes, I came to accept it. With a trembling hand, I clicked on the details for her most popular story. The title of the first chapter was The Arrangement. The male protagonist, forced by his family, deliberately gets close to the female protagonist and then offers himself to her. What followed was a series of scenes I can't even describe. My face burning, I slammed my phone shut. Somebody please, save me. Who on earth started the rumor that Rose Thompson was cold and passionless? Who was it? Setting aside the spicier scenes, I could see that many of the events were inspired by my actual life with Rose. She even managed to twist our most mundane, everyday interactions into something else entirely. The library, the dining room, a surprise late-night visit. But the part that really made my blood run hot was one particular scene. While the housekeeper was serving dinner, the heroine was under the table. I immediately shut off my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had no idea who her readers pictured as the heroine, but I knew for a fact that the character was based on the goddess of New York society, the cool and impossibly beautiful Rose Thompson, and a woman like that was doing those things for a character based on me. I struggled to calm my racing heart and glanced over at Rose on the sofa. She was staring intently at her screen, fingers flying across the keys. All I could hear was the clatter of the keyboard, but in my head, I could also hear the steamy, heart-pounding scenes she was writing. She was wearing a form-fitting dress under a white cashmere cardigan, her long, straight black hair tucked casually behind one ear, giving her an air of lazy seduction. Her legs, so perfectly sculpted they could have been a masterpiece, swung gently back and forth in time with her thoughts. This was the woman everyone admired, the goddess everyone wanted, and she was secretly fantasizing about me. After a great effort, I managed to calm my parched throat and racing pulse, took a deep breath, and finally broke the silence. Rose, is there something you're hiding from me? Rose's expression froze. She looked down for a long moment before finally meeting my eyes, her lips pressed into a thin line. You found out. Was this it? Was she about to confess everything? My heart leaped into my throat. Then she said, I'm sorry. Your parents stopped by today, but I saw you were still sleeping, so I sent them away. I was speechless. Fine. It was clear she had no intention of telling me about her writing. It was her private life, after all. I decided it was best to keep pretending I didn't know. For the next few days, my parents, apparently feeling guilty, brought me meals every day. I knew their real target was Rose. Their gestures didn't move me in the slightest. In fact, they repulsed me. Rose, you must be exhausted too. Come and eat, my mother cooed, laying out the containers on the table. It was an impressive spread, but there was nothing in it for me. I was on a strict diet of bland soups. My mother clearly hadn't considered this. Her face flushed with embarrassment, and when she thought no one was looking, she shot me a glare. Just eat what you can. Come on. Outwardly, Rose said nothing, but she gently pressed down on my hand, stopping me from picking up my chopsticks, while her mind went into overdrive. Asterisk, what is all this? My husband will never be able to digest this. Asterisk, asterisk, how can I let him eat this stuff? No, I have to take matters into my own hands. Asterisk, I shifted slightly, turning to look at Rose. She was helping my parents serve the food, but her brow was furrowed and her lips were pressed into a thin, unhappy line. Asterisk, is this what any parent should be buying for their son? There isn't a single thing here my husband actually likes. Asterisk, I felt a strange warmth spread through my chest. Under the table, the screen of my phone glowed with a note Rose had just passed to me. The message read, don't eat this. I've already sent someone to get you something else. The empty space in my heart, the one carved out by a lifetime of parental neglect, was suddenly, unexpectedly full. My expression remained cold, but inside, I was melting from the warmth Rose had shown me. During the meal, my parents tried to steer the conversation toward their real objective, but Rose cut them off every time. We can discuss business after Make has fully recovered, she stated firmly. Her tone left no room for argument, and they swallowed their words, clearly afraid of upsetting her. The next day, Rose had the small utility closet in my VIP suite converted into a kitchenette. Anyone walking in would think I was planning on moving in permanently. He needs to eat food that I've made myself. The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Rose watched me like a hawk. I had to clear it with her just to take a walk down the hall. People who knew what was going on understood. I had a food allergy. Everyone else probably thought I was on death's door. Sorry, folks. My wife's just being a little overprotective. I've always been one to gravitate toward a commotion, so when I saw a crowd gathered in the hospital corridor, I pushed my way through. That's when I saw two people I knew all too well. Jessica, I called out, my voice hesitant. The woman's arm was caught in the man's brutal grip. Her hair was a mess, and despite the summer heat, she was wearing a long-sleeved shirt. The moment she saw me, her eyes darted away, and she immediately lowered her head. I knew that face so well, and I didn't miss the dark bruises blooming on her cheek. All right, show's over, everyone. I'm just taking my girlfriend to get checked out, Leo Miller said, dismissing the crowd. He turned to me with a sickeningly sweet smile. "Make, my man. You're not feeling well?" I ignored him. "Jessica, what happened to you?" I demanded. She flinched, her eyes wide with fear. It's nothing." I knew something was wrong. Leo cut in smoothly. "Your cousin had a little accident today. I'm taking her to get looked at, so you don't need to worry about a thing." I pulled Jessica behind me, moving her out of Leo's reach. She stumbled, and the collar of her shirt shifted, revealing the distinct shape of fingerprints bruised onto her neck. My eyes went cold as I stared at Leo. Domestic abuse is a crime. I had never liked Leo, but he had a sterling reputation in our social circle. He was known for his easygoing nature, a man without a single flaw. Everyone knew how well he treated my cousin. Jessica's eyes were filled with terror as she yanked her collar up to her chin. I knew I was right. "Make, I'd advise you to stay out of things that aren't your business," Leo said, that smile still plastered on his face. But his eyes were cold and slimy as they fixed on me. He reached out and yanked Jessica back to his side. He was threatening me. "You touch her again, I dare you," I snarled, taking a step forward. "You piece of trash. Get out of my way." A fist flew toward my face, stopping just inches away. I was already preparing a countermove, but someone else was faster. "If you have a death wish, just say so," a cold voice said. Rose swept Leo's legs out from under him with a powerful kick, then landed a solid punch on his jaw as he went down. Right? I'd forgotten she had an 8th-degree black belt in judo. Leo's face was already turning purple. He scrambled to his feet, grabbed Jessica's arm, and ran. I started to shout after them, but Jessica looked back at me and shook her head, her eyes pleading. I stopped in my tracks. Asterisk sob, "My husband almost got hurt. I should have gotten here sooner to protect him. Asterisk hubby, my hand hurts." I snapped back to the present and looked at Rose with concern. "Is your hand okay?" "It's fine," she said. Asterisk, it's not fine. It's not fine at all. I need my husband to blow on it to make it feel better. Asterisk, I was at a loss for words. She was unbelievably stubborn. Ahem. I awkwardly took her hand in mine. I have a method for stopping the pain." Then, as if moved by some unseen force, I opened her palm and gently blew on it twice. "If you blow on it, it stops hurting." She had helped me out this time, so I figure I could indulge her just this once. I looked up and found myself lost in her eyes, which were gazing at me with an expression so full of love that time itself seemed to stand still. "Excuse me, please don't block the hallway." A nurse's voice broke the spell. I quickly let go of her hand. "Well, as long as you're okay. I've got to go." Behind me, I could hear Rose's internal shriek of joy, loud enough to burst my eardrums. There's no such thing as a perfect person, unless that perfection is a carefully constructed facade. As soon as I got back to my room, I started digging into Leo Miller's background. The results were unanimous. The man was perfect. To the outside world, Jessica was lucky to have married him. "You wear a mask long enough," I muttered. "You forget who you are beneath it." Before my investigation could turn up anything concrete, Jessica showed up at my door, begging for help. She fell to her knees with a sickening thud. "Please, Make, you have to help me. I want a divorce," she sobbed, her eyes streaming with tears. She grabbed my arm, and I could see her own wrists were covered in the dark, linear bruises of a belt and the small, circular burns of a cigarette. A wave of grief and fury washed over me. It wasn't that she hadn't wanted to leave all these years. She had been too afraid. Everyone thought Leo Miller was incapable of such cruelty. "He hit you a few times. Is that really worth making a public spectacle? He's such a good-tempered man. You must have done something to provoke him. You found a man that good, and you're not holding on tight? You want a divorce over a little disagreement? Who do you think will want you after this?" The speaker was my mother, and the rest of my family nodded in agreement. Jessica was trembling, her head bowed low. I shot them all a furious look. "All of you, shut your mouths." But it was no use. Jessica was led away. Leo pulled her to her feet, and she didn't resist. I opened my mouth to protest, but she looked over at me and gave a slight shake of her head, her eyes filled with a profound, desolate sadness. A white-hot rage at the injustice of it all consumed me. The voices outside the door continued their chorus of blame and insults. "Rose, come and get me," I said into my phone. I wasn't going to sit by and do nothing. I burst out of my room, and my eyes immediately found Jessica, head bowed, surrounded by our family. "I'll help you." The moment I slid into the car, my anger was still simmering. Rose hit the gas, leaving the crowd of our relatives in the dust. "I told you I would help you get a divorce," I said, looking at Jessica with determination. She was already sobbing, unable to speak. We got back to our apartment and settled Jessica into a guest room, where she quickly fell asleep. "Thank you for coming to get us," I said to Rose. I was truly grateful. My family's drama had already caused her enough trouble, but she never once complained. Whatever my husband wants to do, I will support him with everything I have. Jessica was sleeping in Rose's bedroom, which meant Rose was sleeping in my bed. After years of a marriage that existed only on paper, this was the first time we had ever spent the night in the same room. Of course, I was still on a makeshift bed on the floor. Asterisk hee, the whole room smells like my husband. Asterisk in the confines of the bedroom, Rose's natural cedarwood scent was amplified, and it sent my heart racing, chasing away any hint of sleep. My mind replayed the day's events. Rose, I began, then paused. Do you think I did the right thing? For once, her inner voice was silent. She had always been surprisingly attentive to my moods. Things are rarely a simple matter of right and wrong, she said, propping herself up on one elbow to look at me. Her voice, perhaps because of the authority she carried as a CEO, was calm and measured. It was a beautiful voice, and it put me at ease. As a lawyer, this is something you have to do. And as Make Evans, your courage has always been an inspiration to me. I closed my eyes, her voice washing over me like a cool, clear stream. If this is something you feel you have to do, then do it. Don't hold back, and don't be afraid. I'll be right here with you. My body and mind relaxed completely. The air was filled with her scent, and I felt myself sinking into a peaceful calm. Rose, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'm here, she whispered back. I slept better that night than I had in years, feeling as if I were wrapped in a blanket of warmth. Just as I expected, my mother showed up at our door. I'll take Jessica for a walk in the garden, Rose said, leaning down so she was at my level. She was never guarded around me, and as her collar gaped open slightly, my ears burned and I quickly averted my gaze. She gave my back a reassuring pat, in a way that felt like she was comforting a small child. Don't worry, she said. I'll be right outside. I nodded. My mother's sharp gaze stayed fixed on me until Rose was completely out of sight. You're still playing at being a lawyer? Make, you used to be such an obedient boy, my mother said, her voice dripping with disappointment. What's so great about being a lawyer? Dealing with desperate divorcees all day, breaking up families, associating with all sorts of unsavory characters. I met her gaze with a look of indifference. So, what is it you think I should be? You should be starting a family. You can manage the household, and Rose can run the business. You mean I should be like you, Mom? I asked, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. My mother's lips moved, but no words came out. This was how my parents had always been. But my mother had once been a fashion designer. Her dream was to have her own label. I could still find her old design sketches hidden away in the house. I wondered how all her sharp edges had been worn smooth over the years. I didn't want that for myself. I would not let that happen. I will not become you, I said firmly. The next thing I knew, Rose was holding me, and I realized my mother was gone. I'm finished, I mumbled into her shoulder. You were amazing, she said. Asterisk, my husband looks so wonderful when he's feeling wronged. I just want to spoil him rotten. Asterisk, the heavy feeling in my chest evaporated, and her words sent a ripple of warmth through me. The still waters of my heart began to boil. I wrapped my arms around her, burying my face in the crook of her neck and inhaling her clean, fresh scent. My grip tightened instinctively. She was mine. Jessica successfully filed for divorce. She had kept medical records from every incident, and the police opened an official investigation. Many people refused to believe it. How could someone who seemed so perfect be an abuser? But then, no one is perfect. Based on the evidence we provided, there was no way Leo could win. I had to stay late at the office organizing documents, so I told Rose not to come pick me up. The lights in our apartment complex were still on, and as I walked toward the entrance, I saw a shadowy figure lurking in the flower beds. It was Leo. He'd been waiting for me. Damn it. You kept me waiting. He spat, his eyes glinting with malice. You little bastard. You ruined me. Suddenly, a blur of motion shot past me. Rose stood over a crumpled heap on the ground, which I realized was Leo, and she was cursing him out. You have a couple of beers, and suddenly you think you're king of the world? You touch my husband, and I'll make you wish you were never born. I couldn't help but laugh. Rose seemed surprised by her own outburst. She turned to me, her expression a little stiff. I've already called the police, she said. Asterisk, stupid mouth. Why did I say that? Asterisk, I bit back a smile and nodded enthusiastically. In the end, since I wasn't actually harmed, the matter was dropped. Rose looked furious. If he had actually hurt him, it would have been too late. If the police hadn't been there, I'm sure she would have landed a few more kicks. At the final hearing, Leo showed up with a face full of bruises. Jessica won her case. Every time we win, The whole firm goes out to celebrate. There's always a lot of drinking, but I've always been able to hold my liquor. Rose helped me into the bedroom, walking slowly. Asterisk, is he drunk or not? He looks pretty drunk. Asterisk, I smiled to myself. I didn't feel like talking, but I was walking perfectly steadily. I took 2 quick steps forward, then deliberately stumbled into Rose's arms. I can still drink, I mumbled. You're drunk, she said, supporting me. The delight in her voice was unmistakable. I am not. I was drunk, and I was faking it. My hubby is drunk, honey. Honey, do you know who I am? Rose's soft voice sent my thoughts reeling. I didn't answer, burying my face in the curve of her neck and breathing in her scent. I'm not drunk, I murmured. Not drunk, she whispered back, her arms wrapping around my neck. The rest of her words were lost as our lips met. It was our first kiss in all our years of marriage. Her lips were soft and full, the kind that made you want to devour them, to be a little rough. But her kiss was slow and tender, almost reverent, and it was utterly intoxicating. After one long, lingering kiss, she tucked me into bed and left. The next morning, Rose was sitting at the breakfast table, her expression as calm and composed as ever. But her mind was a different story. My husband probably doesn't remember anything, right? Asterisk, what if he does remember? Will he think I'm a creep? Will he want to divorce me? Asterisk, I opened my mouth to speak, but I couldn't get a word in edgewise. I slid into the chair next to her and asked as casually as I could, I was pretty drunk last night. I didn't do anything too crazy, did I? Rose turned away, seized by a sudden, violent coughing fit. The tips of her ears, peeking out from under her hair, were bright red. No, she said, her voice a little hoarse. You were very quiet after you'd been drinking. I had to hide my smile. Because of the case, the fact that I had secretly opened my own law firm was no longer a secret. Make Evans by becoming a lawyer. You have disgraced the Evans family name. My father roared, slamming his hand on the table. Is this how you repay me for everything I've given you? My law firm was shut down. Overnight, I became the laughingstock of our social circle. My father gave me an ultimatum. If I ever practiced law again, he would disown me. It wasn't like I was eager to call him my father anyway, so I didn't pay it much mind. That is, until I was at a gala and overheard a group of them placing bets on how long it would take for Rose to divorce me. The Evans family is about to cut him off. He's useless to Rose Thompson now. He was never good enough for her in the first place. A chill went through me. I could give up my name, my status, anything, but I would not give up Rose. She was my wife, and she would only ever be mine. Across the ballroom, Rose stood at the center of an admiring crowd, the object of their flattery. They were right. In terms of wealth, power, and influence, I was nothing compared to her. Plenty of wealthy heirs in New York were just waiting for me to fail so they could make their move. After all, Rose was flawlessly beautiful. She was a goddess, a prize to be won. My husband, my dear husband, her voice pulled me from my thoughts. Everyone, I'd like you to meet my husband, Make Evans, Rose announced, suddenly by my side, her arm linked warmly through mine. He's a brilliant lawyer and has just opened his own firm. If any of you ever need legal counsel, you know who to call. As she spoke, her assistant began handing out my business cards. All of their companies had in-house legal teams. Rose had to know that. So what was this all about? Asterisk, I'm showing my support. I'm flying my husband's flag high. Asterisk, I stared at the curve of her lips, my heart pounding in my chest. But the more she did, the more a strange feeling of inadequacy gnawed at me. I started my own company right after graduation, and it had taken 2 years just to get off the ground. Progress was painfully slow. It was no wonder they all looked down on me. My law firm was gone. My father had people watching my every move. And even though I had a dual degree in finance and law, finance had always been my weakness. I was terrified of failure. I stayed at the office late every night, trying to land the one big project that could launch my company. But the client was notoriously difficult, and I was running myself into the ground. Asterisk, my poor husband is working himself to death. Sob, my heart aches for him. Asterisk, to my surprise, Rose was still awake when I got home. Eat something before you go to bed, she said. I put down my briefcase and didn't argue. Asterisk, sob, my husband has gotten so thin. I'll make him a huge, nutritious meal tomorrow to make up for it. Asterisk, she had to be seeing me through some kind of filter. The next morning, Rose was already gone when I woke up. My alarm hadn't gone off. I grabbed my bag and raced to the office. Sir, we lost the project. The words hit me before I'd even had a chance to catch my breath. We were halfway through the deal. Who was it? It was your father, CEO Evans. My father. His call came through a second later. This is just your first lesson in the real world of business, he began. That's enough. I cut him off. You've had your eye on this project for a while, haven't you? I said, my hand clenching my briefcase as I fought to control my rage. You let me do all the hard work. and then you swooped in at the last minute to steal the prize. What nonsense is this? All's fair in love and business. You should have been more careful, he blustered, his voice thick with shame and anger. I hung up. I threw my briefcase on my desk, a small, unsatisfying outlet for my fury. The papers inside spilled across the desk. On impulse, I picked one up. It was covered in notes and annotations. The handwriting was sharp, precise, and elegant. I knew immediately who it belonged to. I flipped through the rest of the pages and found a small card tucked inside. It read, "Private tutor. Services are not free." Below was a phone number. I dialed. "Hello, Professor Thompson. I'm calling to inquire about your tutoring fees." As for my fee, I continued, I was hoping we could arrange a payment plan similar to the one we had the night I was drunk. How does that sound, Professor? Click. She hung up. I burst out laughing, the anger and frustration of the morning melting away. A moment later, a new iMessage popped up on my screen. It was from Rose. Phoenix. And just like that, with Rose's excellent tutoring, I started to find my way again. "Are you reading a law book?" I asked, looking up from a mountain of paperwork to rub my stiff neck. Rose was leaning against a bookshelf, frowning at a thick legal text. Asterisk, this is so difficult. How did my husband ever learn all this? Asterisk, I had to suppress a smile. I had started to think Rose was capable of anything. And here I thought you knew everything. I teased, standing up to stretch. For years, my husband has treated me like a machine, she said, rubbing her temples with a small smile. But I think the one who understands the law is the truly omnipotent one. Her gaze was so intense, I had to look away, burying myself back in my work. Asterisk, why aren't any of these lines from my novels working on him? When am I finally going to get a pounce on my husband? Asterisk behind me. I heard the rustle of a book being opened. What kind of CEO hides a romance novel inside a law textbook? Things at the company were going well. We were making good progress. Then, my parents invited me over for dinner, a rare occurrence. They specifically told me not to bring Rose. "Let's have a nice family dinner, just the three of us," my mother said, ushering me to a seat and preparing to serve me. I had no appetite, but I was morbidly curious to see what they were planning now. It was almost comical, but I played along. My mother stiffly asked me how I'd been. In the past, they had always been too busy for family dinners. An evening with the three of us had been an unheard of luxury. My hand froze midair. I stared at my father, my face a blank mask. "If you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush." "Your company," my father said. "Sign it over to me." I didn't get angry. I laughed, a cold, mocking sound. There it was, just as I'd expected. My expression seemed to infuriate him. "You're my son. What's yours is mine." I'd known they were shameless, but I'd never realized they were this pathetic. "That's enough," I said, my voice raw. I stood up, ignoring their glares of disapproval. "I'm so disappointed in you. If you walk out that door today, then you're no longer my son." My steps faltered for a fraction of a second. That was a threat I was more than happy to accept. I walked straight out the door. Rose's car was parked right where I'd left it. She had been waiting for me the whole time. The fight with my family, the fact that I had parents like them, it was all so humiliating. My mood was grim. Suddenly, I found myself pulled into a cool, comforting embrace. Rose held me tight, her hand stroking my back. She could read my every emotion just by looking at my face. I buried my face in her neck and took a deep, steadying breath. She had a magical ability to calm me down instantly. "It's okay now," she murmured. Asterisk, excellent. I've never made my husband this upset before. I'm putting several marks against their names for this. Asterisk, I let out a small snore of laughter. "Let's go home, okay?" Rose tilted her head up, her hands gently cupping my face. Even now, when I had nothing, she still looked at me like I was the most precious treasure in the world. I was loved. She truly loved me. Rose drove slowly, and the storm in my heart began to subside. I yawned and leaned against the seat. "Rose," I murmured, "I'm here. I don't have a family anymore." I waited for a reply that never came, and then I drifted off into a heavy sleep. When I opened my eyes again, I was in my bedroom. It was late, and I was about to get ready for bed when I noticed a gift box by the door. I paused and walked over to it. It was in my room, so it had to be for me. I already knew who it was from. A card was tucked into the ribbon on the box. It read, "For Make Evans, who will always be worthy of love." And below that, the signature, "For Make Evans's forever wife." My heart skipped a beat. I carefully untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. On top was an award certificate made out to Make Evans, attorney at law. I remember it clearly. It was from a mock trial competition in college. After I won, I received an anonymous package containing this very certificate. So it had been from Rose all along. Beneath the certificate was a scrapbook. Every page was filled with photos of me, every award I'd ever won. The photos were always taken from a distance, but the subject, me, was always in perfect focus. The corners of the photos were curled with age, and on the back of each one, she had written a little note. It turned out that in all those moments when I had desperately craved a single word of praise, there had been someone in the crowd whose eyes were only for me. I carefully put everything back in a box. A voice inside me screamed that I had to see Rose right now. I threw open my bedroom door and collided with the person waiting just outside. Before she could finish, I made my move. I pulled her into a desperate, tight hug, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. Rose, Rose, Rose. I'm here, she answered patiently, again and again. I buried my face in her shoulder. I like you so much, I confessed. Her reply was simple. I love you. And just like that, the constant chatter in my head went silent. I realized I couldn't hear Rose's thoughts anymore. The next day, my father held a press conference to publicly disown me. He also sent me a text message. How long do you think you'll last without me? And it was true that a few of my clients, who had only been using me to get to my father, disappeared. The gossip columns were having a field day. They said I'd thrown away a fortune for pocket change, that I'd tossed aside my only lifeline. Without my father, how could I have ever achieved anything? They all seemed to forget one small detail. I was Rose Thompson's husband. Of course, I had never planned on using my family connections to run my business anyway. After the dust settled, my company got back on its feet, and we were doing better than ever. So, Rose said one evening, a sly look in her eye, "You have a little more free time these days, don't you?" She reached for me, but I held up a hand to stop her. No, it was day 186 of not being able to hear Rose's wicked little thoughts. My inspiration has completely dried up, she said with a dramatic sigh. Not my problem, I said, but my readers are demanding updates. They're sending me death threats. I am scared, honey. Before I could react, she had thrown herself into my arms. My law firm was back in business. We won another case. Rose was helping me walk, my steps slowed by alcohol, when she asked in a soft, cautious voice, "Honey, are you drunk?" "I think I can have another." "Hee hee, you're drunk." "Fine. I guess I could indulge her."